We got to talk to you this month because it's the first week of March and it's time for some serious basketball here at Alabama. Roll Tide, man. How's everything going?
Roll Tide. Can't complain. The best time of the season.
It really is. And for the Crimson Tide, the best time of the game in men's basketball, final 20-ish seconds in Knoxville the other night in that come from behind win against the Tennessee Volunteers. Just first of all, your reaction to that ball game as Alabama at times had a tough time getting going against Tennessee. Maybe it's looking like the sixth straight loss to the Vols in a row, but how did Alabama pull it out in the end?
That was an unbelievable finish. And it was all about the finish for Alabama. When you look at the box score, it's just uncanny of how to figure out how did they win this game. You were dominated on the glass. The offensive rebounds, Tennessee was able to get so many of those. They outshot you by 22 shots and field goal attempts in the game. They blocked just as many shots. I mean, for Alabama to somehow, some way have enough grit to pull that one out, it was just phenomenal for the program. And to stop the winning streak of Tennessee for five straight wins is huge. LeBaron Philon, he atoned his basketball sins in his last outing in Thompson-Boling or the Food City Center. And when he did not have that good finish last year, we had a turnover, a 5-second call, and missed the free throw. But here he is this time with the ball in the clutch and the game on the line, and the sophomore took over. I mean, that was just a spectacular play that he made in isolation for a very, very memorable win for Alabama and a significant win for the program.
It's just great to see LeBaron Philon back. Alabama had played well without him for the previous two ball games after the double overtime thriller against Arkansas, but just a game like that, does it show what a difference maker he can be for this team?
Totally. And not only him, it's the fact that Alabama is playing their best basketball right now. In recent games, he hasn't been playing up to his high standard of offensive production, but you've been able to see the rest of the team, Aiden Holloway playing outstanding, Aiden Sherrill being a force down low under the boards, Latrell Wrightsell stepping up big in this last game against Tennessee. So when you look at the team and you talk about the freshman Amari Allen, you cannot leave him out. They are starting to show that they have a balanced attack offensively, that they can play and win tough games, particularly on the road. And now with the winning streak that they have, they're looking like a dangerous team moving into the SEC tournament and the NCAA's.
And now getting ready for the final week of the season. First of all, coming up on Tuesday night, Alabama against Georgia, and then the Crimson Tide will be at home against Auburn coming up on Saturday. But for this team to try and keep it rolling, what's going to be most important, first of all, against the Bulldogs?
Well, I think you have to understand that you have to be prepared for the anticlimax, a situation where you've coming from being so high in a huge win. You have to respect Georgia. Georgia's a really good team, and they're fighting to be in the NCAA and probably will be there. A strong team that finishes well in the paint. They can play at a high tempo pace with some elite level guards that will be looking for this matchup as they get an opportunity to take on what many people think is the hottest team in the conference, and particularly when it comes to the guard play of LeBaron Fallon and Aiden Holloway. Smurf Millender, it will be ready to play, as well as the rest of the squad that Mike White has at Georgia. And they can really do a lot of really good things from the guard position and with Santos Surreal down low. So this is going to be a tough game for Alabama, and you have to be able to move on past the game from Tennessee and reset to play another tough game.
That's coming up for the Tide on Tuesday, and I mentioned as well Alabama's at home against Auburn to wrap up the regular season coming up on Saturday. Being an in-state product from Athens, Alabama, just how special these games always are. Alabama against Auburn, especially with what's going on right now at Auburn, fighting for its NCAA tournament life.
Well, always a rivalry game is something that you have to be ready to play for. It's obviously, if you're Alabama, you don't want to skip too far ahead and overlook Georgia, but you do know that there's a big time home matchup coming. And you won the game earlier at Auburn, which was a huge victory for them at the time. And Auburn's not quite the team that they were. But in a game like this, you throw out the records, and they know that they will come into this one with all of the spirit and enthusiasm to try to get a significant road win that can get them off of the bubble and back into the NCAA tournament. So if you're Alabama, you have to be ready to continue the win streak that you're on. Play the next two games the same way you've been playing the previous when you're playing hot. Continue that same sense of urgency and keep your streak going into the SEC tournament.
That's going to be coming up next week in Nashville. And for the SEC, we're once again seeing Alabama start to rise a bit in the standings. But one team taking a lot of headlines right now, the Florida Gators. And you're coming to us live from Gainesville. Just what can you tell us about Todd Golden and this team, the way they've gotten through a tough non conference schedule, maybe not one they liked, but now starting to play really good basketball?
Well, this team is top notch, and they have get it done all season long when it comes to elite front court play. They go four deep, and you talk about what's probably going to be up for a first team All SEC guy and Thomas Houck. He can really play with his versatility, but they play also a style that they play well together. It's a little bit of a throwback game when you see the high-low passing, two bigs that can play with each other in the paint. They can offensive rebound, and they all can get out and run their lane and finish on the break. You pair that with Xavier Lee and Boogie Flan, who've started to play a little bit better. And if they can hit some shots, this is a legitimate team to repeat as national champions. Alabama played them early on in the season, and it was the last loss that they had. And you have to look, if you're Alabama, at this Florida team. Can you be in a collision course to get a rematch in the SEC championship game in the tournament? If both teams continue to handle their business, this should be a big time matchup that we can see moving forward. But the Florida Gators, they're definitely legit.
Yeah, could see that coming up maybe in a championship in Nashville. Is of course the SEC tournament next week for the men. For the women, it is this week for Christy Curry and the Alabama women's basketball team. And got to start our women's basketball conversation saying thank you for joining me at Memorial Gymnasium on Thursday to provide radio color analysis of that ball game, Alabama against Vanderbilt. Where do things stand for the Crimson Tide women's basketball team as they start this week in Greenville, South Carolina?
Well, first off, always a joy to be back alongside you on the sideline calling the game on the radio. That was a lot of fun. And Alabama gave a spirited effort against a top Vanderbilt team. But I think the tough schedule that they have had down the stretch has challenged Alabama. They played Texas, another top five team, very close in a close, hard fought loss in senior day in Tuscaloosa. But you have to be able to build from that you know that you can play against some of the elite teams in the country. They've had significant wins this season on the road and in conference play against some high level opponents. They've remained in the top 25 for over half of the season. I think if you're Christy Curry, this has been a phenomenal season. She's done a really good job of getting the most out of her squad and making sure that these girls are playing collected and together and motivated. Now you're getting to postseason play. It's time to reset and pull some of that positivity that you had from those big wins that you had early on in the season. If Alabama can do that, then they can get into the tournament and get some wins and hopefully move forward. Now, the gauntlet of the SEC shows that they have a lower seeding and they're going to be solidly an NCAA tournament seed. So it's not an easy task, but getting an opportunity to play an early game could create some momentum for Alabama in the SEC tournament.
Yeah, the Crimson Tide, first of all, matched up against Missouri, a team that Alabama defeated earlier in the season on the road in Columbia. Then the second round matchup would be against Tennessee, and then after that, potentially against Texas. And sometimes we see this, either men's or women's side, a team will get hot from day one. And do you feel like Alabama's got the potential for that, especially with the high level of play we're seeing from Jessica Timmons right now?
I think so. And you're spot on to start with Jessica Timmons. She's been shooting the ball really well. She had a big performance in recent games. And again, down here in Gainesville, she had a career high. But I don't only look at Jessica Timmons. I look at Tamia Scott and what she's been able to do. I think she's been a wild card for this team, playing really good in the second half of the season. And Carly Weathers always being solid in the many of things that she's able to do to impact the game. So those guard play of Alabama, I think if you get the first game under your belt, that allows you to get a little bit of a rhythm in an arena that maybe you haven't played in and had some success in. And you can take that momentum into the second round against Tennessee if you're able to get past Missouri. A big key for Alabama will also be, can Essence Cody return to the top-notch form that we have seen in past? She started to show some positive things in the last game against Texas. It's important for her to take that momentum and continue to play strong up under the boards because that type of component will be huge for Alabama moving forward.
We're looking forward to this week for Christy Curry, the women's basketball team, again in the SEC tournament. Mentioned you're in Gainesville, Florida, getting ready for a broadcast. So, what can you tell us about the broadcast schedule coming up for Richard Hendrix? Final week of the men's season before conference tournaments just around the corner.
Yeah, last couple of games. It's been a fun season being around the SEC all year long on the men's and the women's side. I mean, the best conference in the league in the country, and you get a chance to see these players and these coaches do their thing up close and personal. Mississippi State, Josh Hubbard's been one of the top players in the league. Get to see him for another time here in Gainesville. This will be a big challenge for him as we talked about how talented this Florida team is and the mission that they're on. And then the next game that I'll be having, finishing off with a rivalry game, and that'll be Vanderbilt on the road at Tennessee. So that should be a good one. A lot of good basketball all around the league. But of course, love when you get to see the Alabama Crimson Tide doing their thing down the stretch in SEC play.
Well, it's going to be a lot of fun. Well, this is Hoops with Hendrix to start the month of March. I think we're going to have Richard come back here on the Crimson Tide Sports Network in a few weeks, maybe to preview the NCAA tournament. But Richard, buddy, always appreciate your time. Thank you for everything you do for us here on the Crimson Tide Sports Network. Roll Tide, safe travels to you coming up.
Anytime, guys. Roll Tide.